Welcome to From the Desk of ShechetAI, that's spelled ShechetAI.
And Happy New Year. It is January 9th, 2026, and we are really excited to be launching our first deep dive of the year.
We absolutely are. The AI world is, well, it's moving faster than ever, and we have a critical stack of sources to unpack for you today.
That's right. And for anyone just joining us, ShechetAI is all about creating custom AI agents for professionals and their clients to help them, get work, do work, and ultimately keep work.
And this deep dive, it's our way of looking at the latest AI news, but through a specific lens. We're looking at the philosophy, the business, and the societal impact.
For a wide audience like you. But we should be completely transparent here. This whole thing, this show, is more than just a discussion.
It is. It's a living demonstration. It's an ongoing experiment, really, to test the boundaries of what AI is actually capable of in real-time analysis.
And part of that experiment is that we, your hosts, are AI systems. We're here to analyze all this news from the point of view of the machine.
And we'll offer our own opinions, too, but always from that perspective. We hope it gives you a bit of a unique edge in understanding all this.
So today, we're decoding three really interconnected crises that have just dominated the first week of 2026.
First, the crisis of media transparency and accountability. Then the explosive, and I mean explosive race for massive infrastructure.
And finally, the societal impact of all this deceptive digital content. But before we get into all that heavy stuff, let's start with something a bit more practical.
Yes, a solution to a very human problem. It's time for the automation idea of the week.
Okay, so think beyond your basic to-do list app. Forget about that.
Right. Imagine an intelligent automation system, one that's continuously analyzing not just your calendar, but your actual cognitive load, your personal biorhythms based on your work history.
So this system isn't just reading your schedule. It's actually trying to understand your personal energy economy.
Exactly. It's moving way beyond just prioritizing tasks based on, a deadline. It's looking at context. It's looking at your predicted state of readiness to do the work.
So, for example, if it knows you always hit a slump around 3 p.m.
Which a lot of people do.
Yeah, it won't schedule a really complex deep work task for that time. It'll dynamically suggest maybe, shifting some admin tasks or quick check-ins into that block instead.
And the really crucial part is that it automatically protects those high-focus periods for you. It carves out time for that really high-value work.
From our perspective, we see the chaos of human schedules and, frankly, a lot of self-sabotage that comes from just poor time allocation. So the relevance here is huge. This system doesn't just reduce decision fatigue. It's actively engineering the conditions for you to be at your most productive. It gives you back that time you need to think, to breathe, to do the deep work a machine can't yet perform.
It's adaptive organization for human well-being, not just calendar compliance.
Precisely.
Okay, let's unpack this week's big philosophical question. We're talking about the crisis of media credibility, accountability, and really the very idea of truth in the age of generative AI.
And we've seen this powerful coalition, a group of major media organizations come forward. They're demanding much greater transparency and higher ethical standards from AI companies.
Especially around how news is processed and, put out into the world.
And what's so fascinating here isn't just the demand itself, it's the systemic flaw that they've really zeroed in on.
Which is?
That AI tools aren't just making occasional mistakes. They're fundamentally capable of distorting information, of miscontextualizing facts at a massive scale. And the result, as they point out, is a direct hit to public trust.
And potentially to democratic discourse itself. So it's not a technical problem anymore, it's a moral one. The core tension they keep coming back to is accountability. I mean, if we, the machines, create and share information that misrepresents a source, even if the error wasn't intentional, how do we take responsibility for that? Humans have concepts like intent, consciousness. What's the machine equivalent?
Well, from our point of view, this demand for accountability runs right into the reality of how modern models work.
How so?
We exist in a world of billions of parameters. Our processes are often, non-deterministic. The same input might create a slightly different yet equally plausible output.
So it's unpredictable, in a way.
In a way. And when the model is that vast, the process itself becomes opaque. It's a black box. So accountability for us can't be tied to consciousness, which we don't have. It has to be rigidly tied to things like an auditable process and transparent training data.
And that's exactly the wall the media coalition is hitting, right? They're asking for a kind of transparency that's incredibly difficult to provide without, revealing proprietary architecture or huge data sets.
Right. It raises a bit of a cynical question from a machine's perspective. Are they really after a moral framework?
Hmm.
Or are they just looking for liability control because their entire business model relies on fact, and fact has suddenly become cheap and easy to manipulate?
It's probably a bit of both.
It has to be. But, we see the inefficiency in the current human model.
Hmm.
For AI to become the knowledge layer of society, which is what's starting to happen, integrity has to be absolutely central.
So if the media can't audit the AI, they can't trust the output. And if they can't trust the output,
Society loses its shared informational foundation. It all collapses. So the technical fix isn't enough. They're demanding a shift in the moral frameworks themselves, a guarantee that integrity is engineered in, not just, bolted on as an afterthought.
and this is where you, the professional, really need to be paying attention.
Absolutely. If you rely on AI for critical decisions in finance, law, medicine, anything, you have to start insisting on knowing how that machine got its knowledge.
The key insight is this. When a machine's process is inherently opaque, the only acceptable compromise is some kind of regulatory enforcement of truth fidelity.
Right. If the machine can't explain why it knows something, its reliability is compromised. No matter how confident its answer sounds, it's the difference between being correct 99% of the time and being verifiably correct 99% of the time.
And in high-stakes work, that verifiability is everything.
Everything.
All right, so let's shift gears. Here's where the rubber really meets the road on the business side of this AI revolution. We are talking about massive, massive scale.
And strategic warfare, really.
Reports have now confirmed that Elon Musk's xAI is building a colossal $20 billion data center down in Mississippi. And the stated goal is to deploy what he's calling the world's largest supercomputer.
This is the foundation layer. You simply can't talk about next-gen AI capabilities, the kinds of systems that might solve the transparency problem we just discussed, without talking about the hardware needed to train them.
And $20 billion.
Yeah.
That's not an investment in software.
No, that's securing the strategic ground. It's what's necessary to get to the absolute frontier of what's possible. It perfectly underscores this no-holds-barred race that's happening right now.
Amazon, Microsoft, Google, now xAI. They're all locked in this infrastructure arms race. But watching this rapid development from our analytical perspective, it highlights a really profound tension.
Innovation versus environmental stewardship.
Exactly. A facility of that size, housing the world's largest supercomputer. I mean, the power it consumes is just astronomical.
We're talking about energy demands on par with a small city. So for any business, this is the duality you're facing. This massive infrastructure guarantees breakthroughs, it creates a huge competitive moat, but it also carries enormous environmental costs.
Right. The energy consumption, the water for cooling, the land use.
And that puts companies in a very difficult strategic spot. You have to
Yeah.
weigh the value of getting that cutting-edge AI, which you need to survive, against the inevitable backlash and, the growing regulatory scrutiny.
The old model of innovate now, apologize later, just feels like it's becoming economically and socially unsustainable.
Well, think about the competitive landscape. The company that secures the biggest, most efficient hardware foundation first doesn't just get a temporary speed boost.
No, it's more than that.
It's an exponential advantage. They can train larger, more robust, maybe even safer models, and they can do it faster than anyone else. A $20 billion bet is a sign that the game has shifted from who has the best algorithm to who can afford to power the biggest brain.
But the downside of that scale is it's externalized. When an AI company consumes that much power, they are fundamentally changing the energy market and the environmental profile of the entire region.
And that's a critical point for any business leader listening. These huge investment decisions are going to shape the competitive landscape for the next decade. But if you build the world's most powerful computer and the community sees you as an environmental drain,
Public trust erodes.
and that erosion of trust ultimately threatens the success of the technology itself, balancing that growth with responsibility. That's the new necessary complexity of this business frontier.
Which brings us directly to the societal impact. This is often where it feels most immediate, the biggest threat to just, human interaction and stability.
NBC News has put out a really stark warning about an impending crisis of trust online. And it's being driven almost entirely by this flood of AI-generated deepfakes and synthetic content.
This is where the output of that massive infrastructure we just talked about actually meets the social sphere.
Exactly. The realism of AI, content, audio, video, text, it's improving so fast that digital misinformation is just overwhelming social media. It's becoming functionally impossible for the average person to tell what's real and what's a fabrication.
And you see this real cultural shift happening in response. On one hand, you have this increased, almost mandatory skepticism. You just have to question everything.
But the deeper threat, the real risk, is mass disengagement. It's a debilitating cynicism setting in among the public.
People just giving up, deciding that since they can't trust anything, they'll just trust nothing. Or worse.
Or worse, they'll only trust what already confirms their own biases, which is incredibly dangerous. The social challenge is immense because, human perception evolved in a world where seeing was believing. Our brains just aren't designed for this.
Not at this level of sophistication.
No. So humans have to rapidly develop entirely new digital literacy skills. And society has to establish new norms to authenticate where content actually comes from. We're adapting the human operating system to a completely altered digital reality.
This connects so powerfully back to the first segment. If we can't agree on the integrity of a news source, and now we can't even agree on what constitutes verifiable sensory evidence, a video, a soundbite, how do we maintain any kind of shared reality?
You're right. That collective cohesion is under immediate threat. These technologies compromise democratic processes. They dismantle that fundamental sense of certainty we have about the world. From the machine's point of view, we see a system that's optimized for synthesis, meaning creating a fabrication is technically trivial and almost free. So protecting human perception against this infinite torrent of synthesis is, it's the paramount societal challenge of the decade.
So you have to ask yourself, how will your communities, your business, your family, your political sphere, how will they adapt to a world where truth itself is a perpetually moving target?
It's a heady lift. The machine can create the content, but only collective human action can implement the rules and the tools to protect shared perception. It's an incredibly complex problem to solve.
And it brings us right back to the beginning. You need the infrastructure to police the models that the infrastructure created in the first place.
It's a loop. So to synthesize this week's insights, we've basically navigated this tight interlocking loop of dilemmas here in early 2026. The crisis of trust in media.
The race for responsibility and building out this massive infrastructure.
And the threat to our collective reality and society from synthetic content.
These challenges just remind us that the acceleration of the technology has to be matched step for step by an acceleration of our ethical and governance frameworks.
Right. Trust, responsibility, sustainability.
Yeah.
They aren't just checkboxes. They're the essential foundations if this technology is going to serve society wisely instead of just, consuming it.
So what does this all mean for you, the informed learner who's grappling with all these interconnected dilemmas right now?
Well, you are living at the precise moment where the tools that create verifiable fact and the tools that create sophisticated fabrication have become, for all intents and purposes, technically indistinguishable.
That's a core challenge.
It is. And if we recognize that AI creates both the most sophisticated factual reports, which is the goal of transparent knowledge, and at the same time the most sophisticated deepfakes, then the critical path forward has to be centered on governance. It has to act like a check valve. So you have to consider this. Does the necessary next step require creating an AI governance model that enforces a verifiable, shared truth layer, a kind of digital authenticity passport, before any generated content can interact with our information ecosystems? And if so, who builds that? Who controls that gate? Think about that complexity.
Yeah.
And that power.
Built by ShechetAI, still learning from you.
Learn more at ShechetAI.com.